Somewhere in the Red Sea, past midnight, an Iranian strike package is closing in on what its commanders believe is an isolated American destroyer. The plan is textbook asymmetric warfare. Swarms of cheap drones launched from multiple vectors, fast attack craft darting between commercial shipping lanes, all converging in a coordinated ambush designed to overwhelm a single ship's defenses before it can call for help. On paper, it should work. The Americans are outnumbered. The attack geometry sound, and the element of surprise belongs entirely to Tehran. But the chaos they're expecting never arrives. Instead, there's silence. A vast electronic silence that swallows their communications, blinds their targeting systems, and turns their carefully choreographed assault into a procession of dumb metal drifting on black water. Within minutes, every drone in the swarm drops from the sky. The fast boats lose navigation, their engines still running, but their operators flying blind. The destroyer, untouched, barely changes course. The entire Iranian force is neutralized not by missiles, not by guns, but by something they never detected and still can't fully explain. It's a catastrophic miscalculation, a legacy military power assuming that the rules of engagement have not fundamentally changed, and it's a warning that most of the world has not yet understood. Because while that scene unfolded in the waters off Yemen, the real revolution in warfare is happening 1,500 miles to the north, in the frozen trenches and bombed-out cities of Ukraine. And what's being built there, not in any Pentagon lab, not in any defense contractor's research facility, but in garages and basements and bombed-out factories, will reshape every conflict on Earth for the next 100 years. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, the math was supposed to be simple. Russia had the second-largest military on the planet, thousands of tanks, a navy with nuclear submarines, an air force with fifth-generation fighters, and an artillery stockpile that could sustain bombardment of 60,000 shells a day. Ukraine had courage, Western sympathies, and not much else. The war was expected to last weeks. It's now lasted over 4 years. And the reason it's lasted is not just Western aid or Ukrainian bravery, though both are real. The reason is that Ukraine stumbled onto something far more consequential, a new model of warfare that turns weakness into a weapon and makes the most expensive military hardware on the planet a liability. In the early months, Russia's artillery advantage was staggering, up to 60,000 shells a day raining down on Ukrainian positions. Western precision weapons, while effective, arrived too slowly and in numbers too small to close that gap. So Ukraine's defenders did what no military doctrine predicted. They found their own solutions. It starts with drones, but not the way most people imagine. Forget the sleek Predators and Reapers that defined America's wars in the Middle East. What Ukraine is fielding are first-person view racing drones, the kind a teenager might buy online for $300. Engineers in basement workshops and startup garages strip them down, strap on a shaped charge or a modified grenade, and send them screaming toward a $60 million Russian tank at 140 kilometers per hour. The operator sits in a dugout wearing goggles, piloting the drone through its onboard camera in real time, threading it through tree lines and into open hatches. The cost ratio is almost obscene. A $500 drone destroying a vehicle worth 100,000 times more. And Ukraine's not producing dozens of these. It produced 4 million drones last year. This year, the target is 7 million. Before the invasion, Ukraine had roughly 10 drone manufacturers. It now has over 500. The sheer density of these systems has created what military analysts now call the drone wall, a layered defensive zone stretching 15 to 25 kilometers from the front line, and in some sectors reaching 40 kilometers deep, where any exposed movement by Russian forces becomes a death sentence. Drones now account for roughly 80 to 85% of all strikes against frontline targets, replacing artillery as the primary instrument of destruction. But the genius is not just in the hardware, it's in the system behind it. A system so efficient it makes Western defense procurement look medieval. Ukraine built something called Naval, a government platform that functions as a national marketplace, connecting frontline soldiers directly with certified manufacturers. Orders totaling over $235 million have already flowed through this system. When a drone operator in Zaporizhzhia discovers that Russian electronic warfare is jamming his control frequency, He doesn't file a report that disappears into bureaucracy. He logs the failure on a real-time dashboard that feeds confirmed hit data, strike distances, and failure modes back to producers continuously. Within days, sometimes hours, engineers across a network of hundreds of companies are testing countermeasures, fiber optic guidance cables that no jammer can touch, encrypted multiband links that hop between frequencies faster than any Russian system can track, AI-assisted targeting that locks onto a vehicle and continues homing even after the control signal is severed. The feedback loop between battlefield observation and engineering response operates faster than any comparable system in military history. A former CIA director recently predicted that Ukraine will possess the most important military-industrial complex in the free world. And when you understand the speed of this cycle, that prediction stops sounding like flattery. And this is what makes Ukraine's model so lethal. It's not a top-down military program, it's an ecosystem. A decentralized network of soldiers, engineers, startups, and volunteers, all operating inside a feedback loop that no centralized command structure can match. Software updates to drone systems arrive in less than a week. Hardware modifications come every few weeks. The cycle of innovation and counter-innovation has become so compressed that both sides see adaptation to technological breakthrough within 2 to 3 weeks. But Ukraine consistently stays one step ahead because its system is designed from the ground up to learn faster than any bureaucracy can think. Consider what happened when Russia deployed its most aggressive electronic warfare systems to counter Ukraine's FPV drones. In any conventional procurement process, the response would take years. Committees, requirements, documents, testing cycles, congressional approval. Ukraine's response took weeks. Engineers fielded fiber optic drones that trail a thin cable behind them, transmitting video and receiving commands through a physical wire that no electromagnetic signal can disrupt. When China, Russia's primary supplier of the specialized cable, shipped 328,000 miles of fiber optic cable to Russia in a single month, while sending Ukraine just 72 miles, Ukrainian manufacturers pivoted again. They developed hybrid systems that switch seamlessly from fiber to encrypted radio when the cable breaks, and AI-enabled navigation that uses visual terrain matching and inertial guidance instead of GPS, which Russia jams relentlessly across the entire front. Here's a detail that most analysts outside the defense community have not grasped. The decisive edge in Ukraine's drone war is not the drone itself, it's the communication architecture. Ukrainian operators integrated Starlink satellite terminals directly into their heavy bomber drones, the massive octocopters they call Baba Yaga. These systems fly pre-programmed routes to within striking distance of a target, and only at the final moment does a human operator take manual control to guide the munition onto the precise aim point. One Ukrainian unit described having an operator sitting in Kyiv in a warm office dropping ordnance on targets 20 kilometers behind the front line. The satellite link means the operator can be anywhere on Earth. The drone doesn't care about distance, it cares about bandwidth. And when Russia began acquiring Starlink terminals through black markets and third-party networks to replicate this capability, Ukraine worked directly with SpaceX to implement a verification system that bricked every unregistered terminal in the country. Within days, Russian assaults stalled across multiple sectors. One Russian soldier, filmed kicking his dead Starlink receiver, told his audience that in a single night they had descended into the Stone Age. That phrase, the Stone Age, is not hyperbole when you examine what Ukraine's drone campaign has done to Russia's most prized military assets. In the Black Sea, Ukrainian maritime drones, uncrewed surface vessels packed with explosives, forced the entire Russian Black Sea fleet to abandon its historic base in Crimea and retreat to Novorossiysk on the Russian coast. Then in December 2025, Ukraine unveiled something no one had seen before, an underwater drone called the Subsea Baby. It navigated into the heavily defended harbor at Novorossiysk, slipped beneath the floating barriers that Russia had erected specifically to stop surface drones, and detonated against the stern of a Kilo-class submarine, a vessel worth over $400 million that carried caliber cruise missiles used to strike Ukrainian cities. The submarine has not moved since. The implications shook every navy on Earth, because if a country fighting for its survival can build an autonomous underwater vehicle capable of penetrating a defended port and killing a submarine, then the foundational assumptions of naval power, that submarines are safe in port, that harbors can be secured, that tonnage equals dominance are obsolete. And this pattern repeats at every level of the conflict. Drones now account for roughly 95% of Russian combat deaths. Ukrainian drone innovations have recently shifted the battlefield advantage back to Kyiv, slowing Russian advances and enabling counterattacks in sectors that had seemed lost. Ukrainian strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure have hit the Baltic Sea oil hubs at Primorsk and Ust-Luga, which previously handled nearly half of Russia's seaborne crude exports, while maritime drones disabled Shadow Fleet tankers attempting to smuggle Russian oil through the Black Sea. Long-range strike zones accounted for 98% of all Ukrainian strategic-level attacks in 2025 and into 2026, with more drones and missiles now flying from Ukraine into Russia than the other direction. Russia sustained 400,000 casualties last year in exchange for taking an additional 1% of Ukrainian territory, a rate of roughly 157 soldiers killed for every kilometer seized. Now pause on that and ask yourself a question that the Pentagon, the Chinese Politburo, and every defense ministry on the planet struggling to answer. If this new paradigm of warfare, cheap, autonomous, easily replicated, and devastatingly effective, makes the world's most expensive weapon systems vulnerable to a nation with a fraction of the budget, does that ultimately stabilize the world or destabilize it? On one hand, it could be the great equalizer. Small nations and defenders can now impose costs so severe that invasion becomes economically irrational. The logic of conquest breaks down when every tank column becomes a target gallery for $500 drones. The calculus that allowed powerful nations to roll across borders with impunity, the calculus that Russia relied on in February 2022, may simply no longer function. But the other side of that argument is darker, and it keeps intelligence analysts awake at night. If the barrier to entry for precision strike capability drops to the level of a 3D printer and an internet connection, then the same power available to Ukraine's defenders is available to insurgents, terrorist networks, cartels, and any non-state actor with a grievance and a workshop. The technology doesn't come with a moral filter. It doesn't distinguish between liberation and terrorism. It simply makes destruction cheap. The specifics of how the U.S. Navy's electronic warfare capabilities were used against Iranian forces in the Red Sea, the deep technical details behind that opening scene, were explored in our earlier video, Iran challenged U.S. Navy, big mistake, for those who want to understand the classified technology that made that silent neutralization possible. But the broader lesson is what matters here. What Ukraine has demonstrated is that the age of the big-budget military monopoly is fracturing. When American engineers recovered a downed Iranian Shahed drone, they didn't commission a multi-year requirement study. They disassembled it, rebuilt it with American guidance systems and satellite data links, and fielded their own version in about 5 months at $35,000 per unit. The Tomahawk cruise missiles it partially replaces cost north of $2 million. The Pentagon's own drone evaluation recently tested a British-Ukrainian interceptor drone that scored 99.3 out of 100, beating every American competitor by more than 10 points. The Pentagon is now negotiating to buy Ukrainian interceptor drones because no American manufacturer can match the price, the delivery speed, or the battlefield-tested reliability. A country under active invasion is outperforming the world's largest defense industrial base, not despite the pressure, but because of it. The necessity of survival compressed decades of innovation into months. Understanding these asymmetric shifts is no longer optional. It's the key to understanding the conflicts of tomorrow, and it's the focus of our analysis every week. So the question that remains is not whether this revolution is real. It's already here. The question is whether the age of the superpower, defined by aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, and trillion-dollar defense budgets, is ending. Whether the future of global power will be decided not in the boardrooms of Lockheed Martin or the shipyards of Dalian, but in a basement somewhere by a teenager with a 3D printer, an open-source flight controller, and an idea that no general saw coming. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more content like today's. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.